I'm going to speak today about the impact of a plant-based diet on prostate cancer. As you may know, prostate cancer is the most common cancer diagnosis given to men every year. In 2017, projected numbers for prostate cancer diagnosis incidence was 161,000 in the United States, and the death rate in 2017 projected was 26,000 men. So there's a lot of patients that are diagnosed with prostate cancer but don't die of it. There's a long, if you take all of the stages of prostate cancer and group them together, the survival at 5 years is quite good at 95% plus. So people do really well with this diagnosis, and it provides an opportunity to really impact the trajectory of their disease because they have a longer life expectancy by changing their diet and their lifestyle. So there are 3 million men currently in the United States with prostate cancer. When patients come to the clinic, they have two questions. One, why are they here? Like, what got them here? And what are they going to do? So when it comes to prostate cancer, the risk factors include obesity, hormones, genetics, and diet. So it's a known risk factor for prostate cancer that high animal fat, low vegetable diet is a known medically established risk factor for prostate cancer that's documented and accepted in the medical community. So what should I do? What do I do from here? They ask, and so plant-based diet is one answer that they can control. They can't necessarily control their genetics, but they can control their weight, which would go along with a plant-based diet, and their hormone ingestion. Of course, they can control that as well. So this graph is historically important. In 1981, this was presented by the Journal of National Cancer Institute, and it shows this 58% of cancer caused by diet and 29% caused by tobacco, which is kind of shocking. And in 1981, compared to now, I think our diets have significantly deteriorated as a society. So I think this graph is very conservative, but at the same time quite shocking. The rest of the risk factors are really small. So even smoking that we think of as a big risk factor for cancer is much smaller than diet. This is a quote by Paula Hamilton, physician, Oxford University. "We are one of the most polluted species on the planet. Indeed, we are all so contaminated that if we were cannibals, our meat would be banned from human consumption." So as vegetarians have 54% less prostate cancer than non-vegetarians. This was from the same study, the California Seventh-day Adventist trial. Animal fat, especially fat from red meat, is associated with an elevated risk of advanced prostate cancer. This graph on the horizontal axis shows animal fat in grams per person per day, and on the vertical axis shows age-adjusted prostate cancer per 100,000 per year. And on the bottom left, India and Japan have the least amount of animal fat ingestion and the least prostate cancer. On the top, you can see United States at the very top, Finland, Sweden, Norway. So it's not the only factor, but it is quite relevant. So I was going to talk about how a vegetarian or vegan diet can help prevent prostate cancer, and also how once a person has the diagnosis, it can help their outcome. And this study was presented, the Melbourne Collaborative Trial studied 14,504 prostate cancer patients. Not prostate cancer patients, no cancer. And it was shown simply that plasma saturated fat levels were associated with prostate cancer risk. Whereas this study by a Quebec group looked at 384 men with prostate cancer. These men were followed for 5.2 years, controlled for the variables of grade, stage, treatment, and energy consumption. And the saturated fat was associated with disease-specific survival. So the upper third saturated fat consumption compared to the lower third had 3 times the risk of dying from prostate cancer. The point of the last slide was really that you can make a difference after you're diagnosed with prostate cancer by changing your diet. So it's not just a matter of preventing the disease, but actually the course of the disease can change with diet. So persistent organic pollutants are a risk factor for prostate cancer. These are man-made chemicals that are resistant to natural degradation caused by industrialization, and they accumulate in the bodies of water and in soil and contaminate the food chain. They're lipophilic, and we're exposed to them through fatty fish, dairy, and meat. The highest concentration is in fatty fish. So some examples of persistent organic pollutants include dioxins, which are produced by the manufacturing process, herbicides, and paper bleaching. PCBs are used in manufacturing of electrical equipment, and DDT is no longer used, but pesticides. So each step in the food chain, there's a higher concentration of these toxic chemicals, and the body cannot get rid of them, so they just build up. And if you eat more grass, so on the bottom it's grass, grains, and algae, and then the cow, it might be hard to see that, but the cow is eating the grass and grains, and then the fish, and then as you go up there's a family, and then at the very top the infant who's receiving the mother's milk. So pesticide residues in the United States diet, clearly the highest in meat, fish, and poultry, then dairy products, then oils, fat, and shortening. And then at the bottom, potatoes, root vegetables, grains, and cereals. So this shows industrial toxins in food products. Freshwater fish is the tall one in the middle, then butter, cheese, and milk. Over on the right is human milk. And then to the left of that is a vegan diet. So the persistent organic pollutants increase the risk of prostate cancer, and this was shown in this trial where the median concentration of these PCB congener and transchlordane, if the value of the adipose tissue concentration was more than the median, the risk of prostate cancer went up by 3.15 or 3.49 times the average, those that had less than the median. Heterocyclic amines are chemicals that are formed when muscle meat is cooked at high temperature. So there's 24 studies that implicate heterocyclic amines in breast, colon, lung, head and neck, stomach, and prostate cancer. Foods on the grill. So chicken breast, skinless, boneless, grilled, and well done, has 14,000 nanograms per 100 grams of meat. That's the most dramatic of this. And steak is 810, pork 470, salmon 166, hamburgers 130, veggie burgers have 0, and corn have 0. Serum cholesterol is an independent risk factor for prostate cancer. The cholesterol levels in animal models correlate with larger tumor size, increased intratumoral testosterone. They upregulate inflammatory pathways. Inside the tumor, the cholesterol leads to increased steroidogenesis, which leads to more hormones, testosterone in the tumor, which drives the cancer. Low LDL is associated with a higher risk of prostate cancer, and high HDL is protective. So this study, patients underwent radical prostatectomy, 1,146 patients, and they were randomized to a statin cholesterol drug versus without. And the patients who received the cholesterol drug had a lower incidence, lower risk of recurrence. But as the drug was discontinued, their rate of recurrence matched those of the control. So what kind of came out of that was that it's better to actually do it naturally with diet than to take the medication, unless you're going to take the medication long term. So protective foods for prostate cancer include the cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. These have isothiocyanate, sulforaphane, which reduces the toxicity of the heterocyclic amines. Plant foods that have salicylate reduce inflammation. And lycopene in tomato products has long been known to be protective for prostate cancer. The allium family includes garlic, onions, and leek. Those are protective. Soy has a plant-based estrogen that's considered protective. Green tea, ginger, berries, and citrus fruits are always also protective for prostate cancer. This slide might be hard to see, but again, emphasizing the benefit of fiber. So on the top, it talks about fiber preventing cancer, and on the bottom, the mechanisms of fiber preventing progression of cancer. And so on the top, the fiber can actually reduce carcinogen concentration, reduce the time of carcinogen interaction, prevent carcinogen activation, and prevent mutations. When cancer is already present, fibers can scavenge the radical oxidative species, induce differentiation, encourage apoptosis, modulate gene expression, enhance immunity, and prevent further mutations. So phytonutrients are chemicals in plants that they prevent cancer, but they are the purpose of them is to help the plants survive against assaults from the environment, so they can protect against fungus and germs and stuff like that. So, but in our bodies, they're helpful to prevent cancer by detoxifying and deactivating carcinogens and fueling the mechanisms that repair DNA sequences, impeding the proliferation of cells that already have DNA damage and protecting DNA against further damage. Also spreading metastases, reducing the spread of metastases. So this is a trial where patients who were diagnosed with prostate cancer declined standard treatment and were randomized to a plant-based diet versus a standard diet. And they were followed for 3 years. The PSA dropped in the plant-based diet by 4% and increased by 6% in the standard diet. When they took the serum from these patients and incubated it with prostate cancer cells in vitro, the plant-based diet inhibited the cancer cells in 70% of the patients and inhibited the cells in 9% of the standard diet patients. In the same trial, at year 1 and year 3, the percentage of patients that needed treatment on the control group was 12% at 1 year and 37% at 3 years, whereas in the dietary intervention group it was 0 at 1 year and 5% at 3 years. So this study, the Geminal study, are patients with low-risk prostate cancer. They declined therapy, and there was no randomization. All the patients were enrolled and given an intense lifestyle and nutrition intervention, and then they had their initial diagnostic biopsy, and then they had a second biopsy at 3 months. And in the RNA of the biopsies, the RT-PCR was performed and identified 48 transcripts that were upregulated and 453 that were downregulated. And a lot of this gene expression involved a lot of the pathways of tumor genesis. So a healthy diet not only can inhibit tumor genesis, but also can have a major impact on cancer progression and survival. Many chemicals found in edible plants are known to inhibit metastatic metastases of cancer. Plant-based diets reduce cancer risk by increasing fiber, phytonutrients, and plant oils, and reduce cancer risk by reducing carcinogens, cholesterol, inflammagens, and saturated fat. Prescribing a plant-based diet is safe and effective. There's no side effects. There's no contraindications. Patients are I don't know if I would say good, but some of them are quite compliant, and reduces the comorbidity risks and is very cheap. These are the websites with more information. Thank you for listening, and thank you for inviting me to speak at this event.